Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barbin. Let's talk football.
Yeah, let's talk football. We're talking NCAA Week 11 reaction. Last week I was off by a week. Kept calling it 9, even though it was Week 10. So,
we should just call it the latest week.
The latest week,
NCAA
just so
week.
I don't know. Anyways, the latest week.
Yeah, the week where Alabama crushed LSU. Just remember that one.
That one. All right. So we're gonna go best ever, then worst ever, and give out some flowers. Shall I get started?
Yeah, well, and it was a bit of a roller coaster with our bets too, right? So that was.
Oh yeah, that didn't work out so well.
Some of them worked out great, some of them didn't. So
there were some pretty ugly ones. All right. All right. So working backwards from 3 to 1. My third best ever thing I saw this week was defenses showing up in big games. So again, this is when I'm trying to pack a bunch of teams into one category so I could talk about a bunch of different teams. So right out of the gates, Ole Miss, they won that game with their defense.
Yes, they did.
They did to Georgia what we expect Georgia to do to other teams.
Exactly.
They held Georgia to 59 yards rushing and 250 yards overall. Some of this is Georgia's fault, but I mean, that Ole Miss defense was all over them. That defensive line was awesome. I mean, they looked like the better team in all phases. And that defense was maybe the best unit on the field. And we're talking about an Ole Miss team that's known for putting up massive points. And instead, they held them to 10 points. Their field goal kicker was part of how they won that game. And that defense was just smothering. Like offense looked hopeless all game.
Yeah. Ole Miss almost had 400 yards. And Georgia only had 245. Like you said, it was the defense that held them in check. Georgia's time of possession was a little bit better. But I think this is one of the games we talked about in our preview where we weren't sure if it was going to be a Georgia type game or an Ole Miss game. And really it was Ole Miss playing a Georgia style and beating them at their own game, which made it extra impressive.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So they didn't track meet them. They just beat them at their own game.
Yes.
So
good defense, holding the ball, not turning it over as much. And like you said, in field goals, scoring,
just getting points when you can, and just holding them down. They got they ended up an interception and 2 forced fumbles, so they won the turnover battle too. It was just that's one of the most complete games I've seen a team play. Just beat them in all phases. They just, there was just nothing. You know what's weird? I think Georgia actually had the time of possession over them.
They did
somehow in that game.
Yep.
But at no point did it really feel like Georgia was going to hang in there. At the beginning, right out of the gates, it looked like Georgia. Oh, here we go. Georgia's going to be really competitive. And then as the game went on, it looked less and less. They actually looked weaker and weaker throughout the game, or their chance of ever competing in that game just kept fading and fading. And Ole Miss just kept getting stronger and stronger. Well, obviously they earned the shirt. To me, that was one of the biggest wins that was maybe the biggest win of the weekend. Also the biggest win for this program under Kiffin, if not the biggest win for this program all like in the last 20 years, maybe.
I don't know. They upset Florida the one time and Bama one time, but it's for sure. You're right about the Kiffin. Like that, it's his biggest win for Kiffin at Ole Miss against this type of team, worthy of the field storming. So
yeah, exactly. I like how the broadcast was showing the kids sitting on the wall just waiting to go.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. It was, I mean, you're just talking victory formation and the game out. Like there was this by halftime. It was like, oh man, they're just not in this one.
Yeah. I'm wondering who's behind Carson Beck.
He might end up seeing the field now.
I don't know. Yeah.
And I was going to say Beck wasn't as bad, but he wasn't what you needed to win this game. This Georgia team does not have championship DNA.
No, it seems like it's if he isn't the game manager and if he isn't the dynamic passer that can get you back in a game, then I don't know what you're offering, really. So
no.
So, the number 3 best thing that I saw.
No. That's just one of the defenses. I've got more.
My bad. Keep going.
I've got defenses. Remember, I'm packing the teams in here. All right.
Sorry.
So we'll go a little quick. I wanted to dwell on that because that was such a huge game and that was such an impressive win by Ole Miss. And to your point, in a Georgia style, not an Ole Miss style.
Yes.
All right. The next defense, Army.
Ooh.
Army holding North Texas, which was the 3rd highest scoring offense or highest yards per game offense in the country and maybe the 5th highest scoring. we took the under 63.5.
That was one of my favorite bets, probably like we've ever made, and we've been betting on sports for a long time. We got it at 62.5, and we picked the under, and it closed at 67. So people were still hammering the over, and so even with the 5 points of value we lost,
we won it by about what?
By just
40 points.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
40 plus. So
now Army only got 2 touchdowns, but whether depending on the level of talent you want to consider North Texas having, either way they put up yards and points on everyone they played, but Army completely locked them down, and that was a super impressive showing because they only put up 2 touchdowns, so they needed it to win. And against a team that should be scoring more, man, they, as evidenced by the over under, that was holy smokes, that was way under.
No, you're right about that. And there was Army edged out North Texas in the time of possession, 41 minutes to 18. So yeah, good defensive showing.
This is an old school Service Academy win, and they maintain their undefeated record.
Yep.
I kind of feel like I'm missing out. I don't have an Army shirt or helmet. Maybe I need to add to the collection here.
You absolutely, it's one of the few you don't have.
It's one of the few I don't have, and they're still undefeated. I sort of feel bad. Apologies to Army. I should have them represented here somewhere.
All right,
two more. Hang on, 2 more defenses. Now this is a back-to-back same game. Michigan's defense.
Yeah.
That was super impressive. That held them in the game. I think we expect Michigan's defense to show up, but they've had games this year where the defense wasn't this good. And I think maybe they knew, and the coach knew, like, this is the only way we're getting through this game. We have to hold these guys down because we can't score with them. So the Michigan's defense did its job. Yeah. And then now Indiana's defense showed up too. And that's impressive that Indiana managed to win a game, not just blowing people's doors off with their offense, but this was good defense against good defense, and they just out defensed them.
Yep. And it was Indiana only had 246 yards and Michigan only had 206, but both teams only had 1 turnover. So it's not like it was one of those crazy turnover on a short field. Like it was just, like you said, it was solid defense by both teams, so that I think
this both defenses showed up to play. Michigan was held Indiana to 40 yards rushing, and Indiana held Michigan to 69. It was, in the end, Indiana has a more dynamic offense and just squeezed out a couple more points. That was it. It's just Michigan can't win a game like this if the other team's defense shows up because they don't have any offense.
Yeah, but like you said, Indiana's known for its high-scoring offense, and so for him to really out-muscle them in the defense, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was huge. So I mean, in a losing effort, they still get some love for that defense showing up big time. All right, so that's my number 3 best ever category.
Very good.
There you go.
All right. So my number 3 best thing that I saw the NCAA this weekend was the classic college football upsets, right? It's always happens every year. You're never sure which week it's going to happen, but teams that you think have no business beating the other team always happens every season. And there were some really good ones. So Ole Miss beating Georgia, and at the Georgia type game, Kansas beating Iowa State. Iowa State really had the fast track to the Big 12, and they're losing to Kansas was really not good. Pittsburgh was undefeated for 8 weeks and has now lost back-to-back games. And this was really going to be a get-right game after losing to SMU, but they lose to Virginia. So just, not a lot of people pick those games. And so, but that's what always makes college football exciting.
Yeah, it's too bad for Iowa State. They were one of my Big 12 darlings, but they might have put themselves in a really bad position to even challenge for the conference championship game.
Yeah.
All right. My number 2 best ever thing I saw, Missouri scoring 14 points in the final 2 minutes to win the game.
That's a good one.
What a crazy ending. I wasn't even going to have eyes on this game.
No, I didn't.
And I don't typically want to highlight games where a team beats another team who's struggling because it's okay, you're supposed to beat that team. But in this case, Oklahoma, with all their struggles, to a man should have at least the same talent level, if not more, than Missouri. Just from the recruiting base that Oklahoma usually pulls from versus Missouri. And also Missouri was on a backup quarterback. Drew Pine was in there. It wasn't the starter. And did you even see how this went?
No, I just saw well, first of all, you need to clip from ESPN, the win probability thing, because it's hilarious. There's a Oklahoma was just as close to 100% as you can get, and then it's just a straight line down when Missouri wins. But it's like, no, you can see it in terms of TDs in the fourth quarter, Missouri scores with 8 minutes to go to make it 16-9. Oklahoma scores with 3 minutes to go to make it 16-16. Oklahoma scores a TD with 2 minutes to go to make it 23-16. Missouri scores with a minute to go to make it 23-23, and then Missouri scores again with 22 seconds to make it 30-23. So
this could easily be worst ever for Oklahoma, because the Missouri score was just an utter breakdown in defense to bring it to a tie game. And then the touchdown, Arnold fumbled. He was scrambling and fumbled the ball, and it was a scoop and score touchdown to win the game with, I don't know, 20 seconds left. So it was an utter collapse on Oklahoma, but obviously Missouri had to be in the game to come back to do all of that. And it was shocking when you're looking at the time, and in the end, when you see how it ends, it's like, how on earth did they get 14 points in such a small window of time? So it was one offensive and one defensive score.
And I'd like to pour a little drink out for the people that had the under in this one, because it was 41.5, which at the end of the third quarter, you're loving it, because it is 9-10 at the end of the third quarter, and you think your 41.5 is an absolute lock at that point, and it flies by it in the fourth quarter with 5 TDs scored in a period of 9 minutes.
Yeah, I know that feeling. That's pretty gross. And we had a few of those this week. Oh boy. All right. Well, that was my number 2 thing, Missouri's final 2 minutes.
All right. The number 2 best thing I saw in the NCAA this week was Aston Jeanty. Again, finally, I got some eyes on this one, and he's just great to watch. And this is something we've covered before on the program, where, he's really good. And what makes it really impressive to me is that they know he's getting the ball. Like, they know they're going to be leaning on the running game. He had 34 carries for 209 yards, which is only like a 6 average, which is still good, and 3 TDs. But, he's just a great running back to watch. He's 5'9", 215. So he's an absolute load, but also agile and quick, and so it's just, he's just great to watch. And so it's, and I don't think he was wearing the elbow brace anymore, which is also good. So I'm hoping that he's healthy for the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's
we might
good.
be able to see him in the playoffs.
Yeah. Now, yes, I was gonna. Yeah, he's in my flower section. I think they're holding on. They're holding on to their chance to be in the playoffs. So they just got to keep going. And he's just a bowling ball.
Yeah,
but a bowling ball that has great lateral movement.
Yeah,
I don't know how else to say. And his, how they always say contact balance. He never goes down on the first hit. Actually, I think that's how he hurt his arm.
Yeah, I think that's the Jim Brown was another one where they said that, and we're dating ourselves now, but it was I remember him suggesting to a younger running back, if you're losing your balance, run into someone, and then that'll get your balance back, which was
that's sort interesting.
It sort of reminds me of Jeanty there. Like, instead of getting it yourself, you just sort of run into someone and then reestablish yourself and then keep going. So
some of these like really strong running backs, like literally physically strong running backs, get to a point. I remember seeing this with Adrian Peterson, specifically in the NFL, when he was at like the peak of his powers, got to the point where it looked as though he didn't accept ever being tackled. He was going to just stay up until you slowly just shuffled him out of bounds. And it actually turned into a fumbling problem, because he would routinely put one hand on the ground to stay up. And I remember multiple times he couldn't help himself, and he'd put the ball hand on the ground. So there was multiple highlights. Again, we're dating ourselves if you haven't seen Adrian Peterson play. But with the ball hand, as he's going to the ground, his instinct to stay on his feet, he would let go of the ball and put that hand on the ground to stay up. And I saw it happen multiple times. And I thought, okay, now you're just, at some point, you can't let go of the ball to stay up. But his instinct was like, no, I'm not tackled yet. And it's like, yeah, you are. You just have to go down. And Jeanty reminds me of that. Now, he's not making that error, but he puts his hand down a lot. And when he injured his elbow, he put his hand down to stay up when he was really not going to get another yard, but you can tell he has the ins. He's like, no, you're not tackling me. And he ended up jamming his arm. So at some point you got to accept that you're going down. Also, if you stay up that long, you're going to get the ball stripped no matter how strong you are. Like at some point you're down. So it's just, it's ironically the hallmark of a running back that good and that strong.
Yeah. So. No, that'd be really hard. Like, cause you want to be, you know, to carry the rock and to not be, you know, to have more than one person bring you down. And it'd be really hard to have that internal clock where go as hard as I can, and be like, now I should just stop because I'm going to get 2 more inches and or have the ball stripped, which is not an option. So
I wouldn't have thought it was a thing until I saw it happen just with like really good backs like Peterson and now Jeanty. Anyways. All right. So my number one best thing I saw, which has to be everyone's, is the BYU Utah game and the game winning drive. First of all, the uniforms, that was awesome. So the other teams I know that do this are UCLA and USC. When they play, they both wear their darks because normally the road team has to wear their white, or at least the home team can choose. But normally the road team has to wear their whites. Do you know that comes from black and white TV?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember that because I was the only way to tell the difference back then.
Right. And now it's just held, which I think is stupid because if your team colors are that different, why not just wear your darks? And this looked amazing. And I'm not even sure if those are normal uniforms. It looked like they were almost mirror image uniforms. Like there was Utah was all red, BYU was all blue. It's the best looking game I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, and you're a big 2-color uniform guy, right?
And
so the
colors,
BYU was just like blue and white, and that's it, no other colors. And same thing with Utah, was just a red and white, I think. With know, so that's no, it looked great. So and that was the last drive got a little squirrely because there was a lot of penalties and a lot of you thought it was over for BYU and then it wasn't. But to get in a position to have a field goal there at the end was really amazing, and that went down. So we were in case if you watched our our bet preview show, and based on the views you haven't, we had the BYU and Utah over. And it was at 40.5 or something.
41.5.
And I thought it was going to goes down as one of the worst beats ever because all we needed was the extra point for BYU to kick, and then it would have put us over. And they went for 2 and didn't get it. So we need that extra point, otherwise we're going to lose the bet. And both teams did whatever they could to not get anything. Like I thought Utah was going to get a field goal at least. They would have put us over. And then, but for BYU to come back and do it, that was awesome. So that was good for them. And at Utah is a big deal. So
And this was the way we bet. I thought it was going to be a BYU higher scoring game. It obviously became more of a Utah rock fight. We still covered by 1.5, but that final drive, BYU was 4th and 10 from their own 9-yard line. With no timeouts and 1:30 left. And the Utah pass rush was going right through the BYU offensive line as if those guys weren't even standing there, just over and over again. I felt like they spent 2 minutes constantly trying to get out of their own end zone. And then the only thing that kept them alive was a holding penalty on that 4th and 10. So they didn't complete anything. And I don't know, the announcers, they were like, yeah, that was a holding penalty. Didn't look like a bad call. That also might be partly why he constantly kept getting running for his life and getting sacked, because there was nobody to throw to. Sometimes they're being held. In this particular case, the guy was holding him. And then after that, BYU strung together a series of amazing plays and then kicked the game-winning field goal. That was one of the best games I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. And I recorded the game because it was late on the East Coast. And I didn't know the result, and I watched it this morning, and I'm so glad I did, because that's one of the that's one of the best things about college football, and games like that are coming down to the end is just amazing.
And now it would have been a little bit better if Utah was actually in the mix for the conference, which we all thought they were, but BYU, they got pole position there. They stay undefeated, so they're one of the few that's left.
Yeah, and the other thing too, which I thought was important, was that the Utah quarterback looked good, so that the Rose, right? So he was that's a good sign because they've been sort of going back and forth with Rising for I don't know how long.
But he's done
right?
He's done for good now.
So, and this guy's a sophomore, so he'll be there hopefully for a bit as long as he doesn't transfer out. So, and he looks legit. So, I thought that was from Temecula in California. So,
that's it's about an hour away from here.
Yeah, no, I went to a vineyard there once.
Yeah, you did.
But anyway, that was so really cool to see that. And Utah's, college football is better when Utah's good. So I'm happy that he's going to be there. Okay, so the number one best thing was the BYU Utah game, but I'll throw in some. I'm going to throw in another one here, and that is the ceiling for Jalen Milroe. That's one of the best things that I've seen. There's some games where he looks absolutely pedestrian, and I don't know what happens in those games or what the defense is doing, but this one from the opening snap, he looked unstoppable. And he has games like that where he's got a great arm. He puts the ball in a great position, and if it's not there, he just runs for it. And so it's when he plays like that, they are unstoppable. It's just that he disappears sometimes. Like in some other games, he's completely pedestrian, or it just stands there and holds on the ball. I don't understand. But yesterday was one of the games where he was unstoppable, and it's great to watch because LSU is a good team, and he handled them like himself. So
boy, they can't stop the run. Or a running quarterback.
We're going to talk about that later.
I was just about to say that segues into my worst ever. Shall we move on to the worst ever?
Sure.
All right. My number 3 worst ever is Sharon Moore.
But hats off to Alabama, though, right?
Of course.
That's the.
We'll get back. We'll get to them. We'll get to them. A lot more for them. So Sharon Moore, 1:20 left in the game. He has 3 timeouts, and the game's only 5 points. And Michigan doesn't. I mean, they're right in there. They're holding the Indiana offense down. So there's no reason to think they don't have a chance here. And inexplicably, he lets 30 seconds run off the clock before he calls a timeout.
Yeah, I know.
He wastes 30 seconds and he has 3 timeouts. Yeah. Now, Indiana has the ball and they eventually get the first down and run the clock out anyways. But in that moment, what are you waiting for? No, I just couldn't believe what I was watching. And same with the broadcast. They just said right out, that's terrible game management. And it was. Yeah. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know if there was confusion with the refs. But as the clock is ticking away, what are you doing? Like, this is your chance. Like, you have to. This is your only hope to even have a chance. Like, whether or not they're going to get the first down, that doesn't matter. You can't let the clock burn for 30 seconds, then call the timeout.
You've got many to spare. Like, you can't use them after the game ends. Like, so you've got 3 and it's just one score. There's nothing more important than the score in that moment. So
how many coaches botch that where they don't have 3 with 1:20 left, and he has them, he doesn't, and he wastes 30 seconds, then he calls it?
Yeah. It was what always fascinates me about this is that we're not smart people, and we can tell immediately that you shouldn't do that. And these are people, football coaches, that's all they've done. Most of their lives is coach football. And it's not just one guy. There is a team of people there, right? There's the offense and defensive coordinator, all the analysts, all the tight ends coach, the running back coach, the special teams coach. There is probably 30 people in there. And for not someone to say, like, call the timeout now, I don't get how we can, looking at it, is immediately obvious what's happening. And all those people who just coach football, it doesn't get done. I don't, like, maybe 5 seconds or 10 seconds runs off before, and you're like, that was a communication error or something, but not 30. It just doesn't make any sense. So
and I can't for the life of me think of a strategy that we're missing as to why that was a better way to do it.
No.
You either call it or you don't. But 30 seconds that goes by, then you call it.
There's enough field left, and there's enough where, if for some reason you have a 50-yard play after that, which they never had the whole game, but if they did, you could still take time in the next, like, run the ball for a yard, and that'll easily take time off, so.
There's just no benefit to waiting. It's like, we're going to play possum. We're just going to let 30. Like, what? There was no benefit there. That was just a huge error, whatever he was doing there.
Third worst thing that I saw in the NCAA this weekend is fans throwing crap on the field. Like, and it really, it's so disappointing. It's classless. It doesn't, I understand people are upset. It's always with due to a bad call. Bad calls happen all the time. They're really frustrating, but throwing stuff on the field does not make it better. They won't overturn the call with that. You're only putting members of your own fan base and players and staff in danger, and it's really class. Like, you just, if you're an established NCAA program, you've had bad calls against you, you've had bad calls go your way. And so it's sort of like a, act like you've been there kind of moment, as opposed to throwing a tantrum like a kid. So
yeah, and this all started with the Texas Georgia game, and Joel Klatz mentioned it, Herb Streets mentioned it. I mean, they've all mentioned it.
LSU and Texas Tech were the bad ones this weekend, but you're right.
LSU and Texas Tech were the bad ones. Good for the coaches for getting on the mic and telling the crowd to stop it. The Texas Tech coach specifically, man, he was screaming. And Dina, we were watching the game, and Dina's like, "What's going on? What's that voice? What is that?" And then the camera turned to the coach, and it was the coach who grabbed the mic, I guess, from the referee, whether or not the referee prompted him. And the only way to stop that is the home team coach.
Yes.
Telling I think Dion had to do it one game too at Colorado.
I don't know, maybe.
But either way, well, he mentioned it in a press conference where that had to happen, because they were asking him about what just happened at Texas Tech. But this is pathetic. This is just a black eye on college football still happening. It's partly the ref's fault for overturning that call in the middle of that mess and not foreseeing that they basically sanctioned the bottle throwing as an effective way to get the refs to do what they want.
Good point.
They probably, I doubt in the moment they thought of that, but even the broadcast as it was happening understood, oh, you've just set a precedent, and look what's happening.
Wow.
So also, this is just the mentality of the crowd. It's just there's just an ignorance and a classlessness to the crowd. Now, maybe half of them are drunk, and you don't expect. I would just expect more out of them. It's just an embarrassment.
Yeah, and it looks. Again, it's the whole thing about football is that it's, supposed to be about the team and character and, making developing kids into adults and stuff. And it just to see on the broadcast, the LSU cheerleading team, which has the signs like "Get Louder" and stuff, and they're just holding it above their heads to protect them against stuff, is like, it's, come on.
Yeah. What are we, Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome?
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on here?
No. So
pretty bad look, really bad look. That's got to get cleaned up.
No.
All right, next, second worst thing I saw, LSU's performance and the result of being eliminated from the playoffs. Overall, this was, I don't know if we could say this was a no-show, or if I just don't think they have manpower for this. They just don't have the quality of player to deal with this type of team. They gave up 311 rushing yards. They clearly cannot handle a running quarterback. A&M did this to them. Milroe is the ultimate running quarterback, and he just went bananas on them. What do you have? 185 yards, 4 TDs. And they just have no answer. They have zero answer for a running quarterback. They had 3 turnovers. They're just not a big boy team right now. They're the Penn State of the SEC. They just can't compete with the big teams. It's just, man, that was bad. And at home. You would hope. I mean, maybe I'm caught up with just the uniform. It's LSU, like they're one of the only teams that can beat Alabama. Not a chance. They didn't belong on that field. They didn't look like they belonged on that field at all. And I say, halfway through the first quarter, or by the end of the first quarter, it was obvious they had zero chance at winning this game.
Yeah, no, and it's listen. I think Milroe played amazing, and he had an out of this world game, and I want to give all the credit to him because they really took it to them. But saying that, everything you said was absolutely right. Like, they didn't, that's the first time this season, at least, that I've felt like LSU really didn't, I don't want to say didn't deserve to be on the same field, but like they really looked like they had no chance in this one. And it just kept getting worse, and it's, and it wasn't like a lucky break or a funny fumble or anything like that. Like, they just got flat out beat. I thought at one point, the rain, it was pretty bad rain, and I thought it was affecting, LSU more. But Bama was playing in the same weather too, like it's really, so no.
But that's that you can't say, oh, our team can't win in the rain. That's pathetic. Look at what Ole Miss did in the rain.
Exactly. No, it's true. And but and I was just thinking for a second, I was like, oh, LSU like didn't, look as good maybe as the rain, but again, Bama looked amazing, and it was they're in the same weather, so
Yeah.
it was no, and at LSU, right? So that you at LSU at night, you're not going to have a better home field advantage than that, and it absolutely did not work out.
Yeah, so that is for sure they're gone out of the playoffs, and Georgia's all but eliminated. They don't
Both
have
of them.
they don't really control their fate here. They even if they go 10-2, the other people have the tiebreak over them. They might not. It's highly likely they're not going to make the championship game either. And again, I'm transitioning a little bit to Georgia, just a last little bit here. I don't think they deserve to be in the playoffs the way they're playing. They don't deserve an at-large bid, even if they end 10-2. They've shown when they go up against one of the better teams, they're just not going to have what it takes. And I mean, LSU even worse. They're not going to be invited regardless. So anyways, yeah. So that was the second worst thing I saw was LSU just, I don't want to say no showing, but just getting blown right off the field and being eliminated from the playoffs.
No, and then that was also my second worst thing was the LSU stopping.
Oh, okay.
It was stopping the run defense specifically, like for Milroe, like it because it was again, but he was good enough passing the ball that it's not like he was just running it and they couldn't stop it. But what really struck me about it is in the broadcast is when they showed the highlights of the Texas A&M guy running amok through the LSU defense, and then Jalen Milroe like running amok through the defense, and it's like, okay, that's but then maybe they have a problem. And there was the South Carolina guy too, I think, had a really good game because
Norris Sellers, he can
Sellers,
run right through that defense.
That was 36-33 as well, right? So
and they should have lost that game.
Anyway,
all right, moving
on.
Talking about bad run defenses, Miami's both their run offense and their run defense. They only managed to run for 88 yards and they gave up 271 yards. Did you watch this?
Yeah. So this one, if you notice, when I talked about the best ever, I had the upsets. I didn't mention this one specifically because those other games, the other teams just played better, and it was both teams played well. Just one team beat the other team, but this wasn't one of those good upset things. This felt like a complete no-show or like lack of defensive effort. Is really
this looked like a lack of effort on all parts of this team. Yep. We've named James Franklin small game James. I want to name Mario Cristobal middle management Mario. He's not a CEO. He can't get this team. How does this team no show in this game? Yeah. They're undefeated. Yeah. They look like they don't. That performance looks like they have no business being invited to the playoffs. That was terrible. Haynes King just clowned them up the middle. Every run was, I don't think he ever actually handed it off around the corner. This was right up the gut every single time. 9 yards, 8 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards. Their defense is laughably bad in this game. And their offense just looked totally lackadaisical. Milroe they were throwing shots down the field and missing by 5-10 yards constantly. He just looked totally casual back there. Like he was, we're going to win. This was an embarrassing showing. And I know you can have a team just beat you, but just the body language of Ward and the way the offense was running, it just looked like they were assumed something was going to happen. And I just can't get it out of my head how many times he overthrew a deep shot. And I thought, what kind of play calling is this? He clearly can't hit these shots. Whatever's going on today, his accuracy is way off. And then they couldn't run the ball for a lick. It was just pathetic. They were just beat in all phases.
And what was disappointing about this is that Miami, everyone has a tough game. Like when you go undefeated or something, like you'll have a close one or one that should have been close or whatever. And they played poorly, but they were in a position, they had it like down by a possession, like with the ball back. And and that's when a good team takes advantage of that. And they didn't. And then that's what's also extra disappointing. In addition to all the stuff you said, like it's
a team that should be in the running for the national championship, which we thought this team was.
Right. It was an undefeated. They could have salvaged the game with a one or two possessions, right? And didn't, which is not good.
If Haynes King did that to them, what do you think Milroe will do to them?
Yeah,
he'll run for 500 yards on this team.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad. That just showed that the ACC just doesn't have anything to offer here at the end of the year. That's really
And
bad.
it's really, yeah, Miami right now hasn't played a ranked team all season, and they have Wake Forest and Syracuse left. So,
which they're going to beat both of them. They're going to be 11-1. They'll likely win the ACC championship because, like you said, nobody in the ACC is any good, and they're going to get boat raced when they get to the playoffs. If this is the type of effort, and that's effort. Part of that's not scheme. Mm-hmm. That's effort. When you give up 270 yards rushing, that's not a bad scheme. That's just your guys didn't show up to play.
I'm going to have to look at the standings right now, because I think as of right now, Clemson's ahead of them. So SMU and Clemson, if the season ended today, would be the top two, and Miami's third. So we'll have to
middle management Mario.
Okay, so the number one worst thing that I saw in the NCAA this weekend was hold on, let me get this right, the Florida State's quarterback situation. So Florida State 1-9, started the season ranked 10th, possible, the playoff contender, and Brock Glenn went 5 for 18 with 2 interceptions, which is horrendous. So it's just it's unbelievable how far they've fallen. The over under, we had this one was 40 something. Notre Dame got it all by themselves, so that was great. The team total for Florida State was 7. Think about that for a second. The team, you could bet over under Florida State team total 7 is 1 touchdown, and they didn't make it, which is crazy.
And the under hit.
Yeah. So I
would have bet that like maybe for Purdue, but not Florida State. Even this Florida State.
Yeah. No, I would have, it was over 7 for sure. Like, and even if Notre Dame blows them out, there's like a garbage touchdown,
a garbage time push. Yes. Don't even win the bet, just a push,
or a random like fumble or interception or something that gives you a short field. Like there's so many ways you could get that, and none of them worked out.
And this is having ripple effects, because I keep seeing articles about players decommitting from them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, this is because it's looking. The difference now is that, it's not a small problem. Like this isn't going to be fixed in a year, like it's going to be it's a 2-year, 3-year thing now. Right. So why would you, if you're a high school player or, even transfer who's got 1 or 2 years left, why would you want to go commit to what it feels like a rebuilding project now?
I don't get it. There's got to be a documentary of this one day.
No, there's a guy.
There's fall apart this badly.
There's a guy that I worked with who got his PhD from Florida State, and he retired in August. And I'm convinced that he just did that so he didn't have to see me in the hallway anymore. So that because I'd be pointing out how bad FSU is this season. So
yeah, I mean,
I think he had an idea.
It's unbelievable. All right, well, yeah, I'm with you. That was bad. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm just on to flowers now.
Yeah, flowers and coal.
No coal. No coal today.
No coal today.
We covered all the terrible stuff already. So
yeah.
Jalen Milroe, you've already covered this. 12 for 18, 109 yards passing.
Yeah.
No interceptions. 185 yards rushing, 4 TDs with a long of 72. And he just, God, is he ever fast too?
Yeah.
He's just big and fast.
He looks good running the ball.
While I was watching that, I thought, okay, this kind of reminds me of Louisville Lamar Jackson Heisman year, and seeing how utterly dominant Jackson is in the pros, and how everyone was questioning, he's just a running quarterback, but now he looks great. I wonder if Milroe has that in him. Someone's going to draft.
Milroe's a better runner, and I think Jackson was a better passer, but I honestly think that Milroe would be a better like tight end or slot receiver, to be honest, in the NFL. But
someone's going to take a try on him.
Yeah, you're right.
Too much talent.
Yeah. Another set of flowers for Quinn Ewers. That was Florida is not a good team, but they're still playing hard, and their defense isn't terrible. And even though they had a bunch of guys injured, but still, to go 19 for 27 for 333 yards and 5 touchdowns is impressive. So that's a good example. Hey, there was some, like, Miami could have just taken care of business, and they didn't. So taking care of business, holding serve, is for an important, like for a conference game, is big. So that's flowers to Quinn Ewers.
Okay, my next one, Caden Davis, Ole Miss's field goal kicker. 5 field goals single-handedly outscored Georgia. So that's pretty impressive. You got any more?
No, go to again.
All right, I got a few here. They're all just within games we've talked about.
Yeah.
Drew Pine coming in as a backup, 14 for 27, 3 TDs, no picks, and that's how you win that. That's how you hang in there and win that game. Riley Leonard, this was actually a pretty good performance. Now, again, they're beating up on FSU, and everyone seems to beat up on them, but 14 for 27, 215 yards, a TD, no picks, and 11 rushes, 70 yards, 2 rushing TDs. So he was just all over them. And, Florida State doesn't have an answer for anybody, but it's good that he didn't turn the ball over. That was the only way FSU was going to score, and he just took care of it.
Well, and I think that if Notre Dame, you're absolutely right. I think he looked good. And for them, it'd be good for them to be sort of hitting their stride now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they've sort of overcome that loss to Northern Illinois. It was the second game of the season. They've beat Navy, they beat Louisville. They've got all of a sudden a massive game against Army on the schedule in 2 weeks. And then finishing at USC. But that's their, if you're coming into shape now, this is a good time to do it. So
I have this thought, and I haven't done any of the research, so maybe it's, somebody knows this. How does Army prepare? Do they have a scout team that runs the other team's style of offense? Because they can't their defense can't be preparing against their own offense for all of these other teams.
Yeah.
That must be kind of a hassle for them to prepare.
Probably. If I had to guess, it'd be a scout team, but I honestly don't know. I'm assuming
they must have this obviously figured out from a long time ago, because they're practicing against their own offenses of no value.
Yes.
So my other flowers are Ashton Jeanty. You've already covered this, 34 for 209, 3 TDs. And then obviously Will Farron, the BYU field goal kicker, 3 for 3, but get the game winner with as much pressure as you could ever possibly have on yourself.
Ever. Yeah.
Yep.
So I got flowers to Penn State too. We were at the wrong side on this one. I was worried about that. Penn State beats the teams they're supposed to beat, right? They can't beat Michigan and Ohio State, but they beat teams like Washington. We were on the wrong side of that one with a plus 13 or whatever it was. But it's this is exactly what they're like. Warren had 8 catches, that tight end. That's amazing. So why they didn't throw to him in the other game, I don't understand. Gatron Allen had 20 carries for 98 yards.
Why they didn't use any of their best players in that game?
I don't.
What's interesting? You don't get it. I'm so glad you brought this up. I didn't watch a second of that game.
Oh, did you? No. Okay.
I have found that I am utterly uninterested in Penn State now, knowing what the ceiling is. They're just going to beat bad teams. And when they run into Ohio State, Michigan, or any of these other teams that are going to be in the playoffs, and Penn State's going to get a charity bid to the playoffs because they're going to go 11-1 because their next 2 teams suck. And they're going to go to the playoffs, and somebody at Ohio State's caliber, it might be Ole Miss, might be Alabama, whoever they get is going to kick their ass. And it's just going to be the same thing. I've actually completely lost interest in them, and they're one of my favorite teams to watch. But this just repeating narrative that the ceiling is below the real teams. Their ceiling is something below the top 15-ish.
Right
Yet
now,
they're gonna get invited.
Right now, we're on pace for an Indiana-Oregon Big Ten title game.
That would be great.
Isn't that crazy?
Would be great.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's all I got. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. Well, that's our review of whatever week that was. 11, I think.
The week where Alabama beat LSU.
The week where Alabama beat LSU. All right. Well, stick around. Tomorrow we're going to have our NFL reaction, and then we'll see how those bets closed out too.
Yep.
All right. Catch you later.